Mike McCarthy's inaugural staff here in the black and gold, the Steelers' 2026 coaching staff, has been finalized.
Yeah, it's great. So, I know we were going to examine the size of the staffs compared to
That's the
Tomlin
big
era.
question everybody has.
I know you're dialed in with what McCarthy's staff consisted of in Dallas.
I did a little research there. Yeah.
And this isn't good or bad, but these gentlemen, at least the coaches, I don't know the strength conditioning group, to be honest, they all worked or intersected with each other somewhere along the line. So
1 degree of separation.
Yeah, there's like 1 degree of separation from each. So they should all know each other and be on the same page.
Yes, they should. And so let's start from the top here.
All right.
We'll run through the offense. I'll give the names, kind of like similar to what we did with the quarterback tiers yesterday.
Okay.
I'll give the group here. We'll discuss the offense for a few minutes, defense for a few minutes, that kind of, general operating procedure. The offense, of course, offensive coordinator Brian Angelico, quarterbacks coach Tom Arth, offensive line coach James Campen, running backs coach Ramon Chinyoung Sr., wide receivers coach Adam Henry, tight ends coach Robert Kugler, senior offensive assistant Frank Signetti Jr., game management and quarterbacks assistant Tim Burbenich, assistant offensive line coach Jari Evans, and offensive quality control Eric Simonelli.
Okay. First off, I think it's super cool that Jari Evans was such a great player and he's on your staff. And I think that carries weight, especially in a young O-line room. Even if they weren't, and if Troy Fautanu wasn't an NFL fan growing up, I think you recognize and understand who that person is in the room. Whether he ever gets in the Hall of Fame or not.
Good call.
The Munchak situation I saw firsthand, there's just immediate respect. Like, I don't think he puts his highlights on and be like, look how I did it, Sonny boy.
You guys know I was a Hall of Fame finalist this year.
But if every lineman on the planet probably is at least going to YouTube his highlights and be like, oh, he was incredible.
Like if you're someone like Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick, I gotta think that's certainly at least a name you remember. Like, oh yeah, that guy was winning the Super Bowl with Drew Brees. You know?
Or you draft someone in the 4th round this year and he gets there and oh, what kind of player was he? Like, I guess I'll look him up. Like, oh wow, he was really good.
Pretty good Wikipedia scouting there.
Yeah. So I think that's just cool. I don't know if he's a good coach or not. They apparently think he is, but I do think that just is one more pelt on the wall. To gain respect right away. And in a young O-line room, which is awesome. I was curious when they hired McCarthy, how did they describe the assistant quarterback coach and game day something?
Game management and quarterbacks, Tim Burbenich.
Okay. So I assume Coach Burbenich, it's interesting they have a side quarterback coach too, because you're like, well, if he's game management coach, what's he doing on Wednesday, or Tuesday? There is no game. So I assume he's going to be intersecting with the quarterbacks, as will the head coach. He's very hands-on with the quarterbacks, McCarthy.
As I'm looking at this, because I wanted to piggyback off of what you're saying there, is it too early? Am I assuming too much to think that once they're in season, it could be a simple kind of delegation of Tom Arth, your job is to get Aaron Rodgers or who insert starter here, ready for Baltimore on Sunday. Tim Burbenich, your job is to continue the development of Will Howard and the backup quarterbacks and make sure those guys are ready if they're called upon.
I assume so.
Because as you and I have laid out many times, there's only so many hours in the week for these guys to get out on the practice field.
That's the smallest position room of anyone. O-line's like, during camp, I got 17 dudes here, and we whittle it down to 10, or maybe even 12 with practice squad. But it's also the most important and the most detailed. I think that's exactly how it is. I think Arth will hang with Rodgers or the starter, where the other guy's going to. We talk about this a fair amount on the show, but not enough. It's really hard to develop talent in the NFL, especially during the season, but even in general. There's not enough hours of the day, fundamentals, footwork. I would assume your assistant quarterback coach is going to be in charge of the young guys.
That makes sense.
JV team.
It makes sense.
Yeah, the next year's seniors,
You don't ask the varsity coach to coach the JV team too.
Right, right.
He might be involved and he might be around at practice, but there's someone who's dedicated to development and making sure these guys can get to the next level.
So I thought that was really encouraging.
Same.
And what I was going to say more about his role is it's not the biggest secret in the world, but McCarthy has not been the best game day coach in the last 20 years.
You've laid that out a few times. Yeah,
I mean, and that's not uncommon for guys that are calling plays. They got a lot going on game day. in addition to head coaching duties. But I think he was smart enough, or maybe it was Jerry Jones that suggested it. But I think his second year, I'm ballparking, his second year as Dallas's head coach, they went out and got a game day coordinator, a game day manager to basically be in his ear. Call timeout here, coach. Or
Challenge that. Don't challenge that.
Yeah, all that stuff, because it's never been his strength.
Hey, if they complete this pass, call a timeout. Or run the ball, call a timeout. If they don't,
call 2 plays in the huddle here, or whatever
yes.
it is. You're right. Yes. Or slow it down. Make sure everybody stays in bounds. Or this weird special team situation. You might take a safety here or whatever. Let them score. Those type of things. And it got a lot better in Dallas. Like if you look at McCarthy's. And I haven't studied this, I'm kind of secondhand information, but if you'd look at McCarthy's entire head coaching tenure, game day stuff was below the line until they hired somebody to do it. And then it was fine. Then people stopped complaining about it.
That's encouraging to me.
Great. Like he realizes he's not good at it, and so I'm going to have somebody else do it.
Everybody has weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care in what line of field we're talking about. If you're the most successful CEO in the world, you still have some areas that you're not the best at.
Yeah.
If you're the best football coach in the world, you still have some areas where you might not be an A+.
Right.
Recognizing that, admitting that, bringing somebody in to help you with that, I think is a strong sign of leadership.
Yes, and it looks like this guy can kill 2 birds with one stone, of course. You're not going to just hire someone to show up on Sundays and be like, call timeout, coach. I mean, he's going to do other things throughout the week. And I think you nailed it. I think he's also going to be quarterback developer.
Defensive side of the football
So it
here.
must be somebody McCarthy knows and really trusts.
If you're going to,
because I wouldn't just meet this guy and he's telling me what to do on game day.
Because those are 2 kind of relatively behind the scenes roles, but they're 2 massively important
they're
ones
really
at the same time.
Though, right.
Defensive coaching staff, of course, D coordinator Patrick Graham, assistant head coach and secondary coach Joe Witt Jr., defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach Jason Simmons. Another familiar name with an impressive resume, defensive line coach Domata Pico. Outside linebackers CJ Ayu. Inside linebackers Scott McCurley. Defensive assistant Sean Howe. And defensive assistant Pat Riley.
Don't have a ton to add out of this group that we haven't dug into before.
Similar with Pico along the lines that you said of Jari
Yeah,
Evans,
a recent player. I mean, Pico's not going to the Hall of Fame, but still, being a recent player, I think, goes a long way.
I think you just want a balance amongst the staff.
Yeah, youth and...
Just because you were a good player doesn't mean you're going to be a good coach. There's a million examples of that in sports.
Yes.
Wayne Gretzky might be the worst NHL head coach ever if you go by record. And I
think Larry Bird was terrible,
and he's the great one. Larry Bird was a bad head coach.
Right.
Yes, those are great examples.
I remember, it was way before my time, of course, but Ted Williams was a coach, and he had, obscene vision where he could see every stitch on the ball coming in, and he'd be like, why can't you see that curveball? Because I'm not
as good as you, dude.
2010 perfect, yes. Unbelievable Superman vision is why, because I'm human. But what was I going to say about this? A couple things. One thing that's just an area to keep an eye on or be a little concerned about is the whole defensive front, which in this case is D-line and outside linebackers. Those coaches don't have a lot of experience, and it's a really important job. I mean, they must be comfortable with them, but these guys are not they're not Coach Mitchell that have been doing it 1,000
Carl
years.
Dunbar.
Yeah, the lion tamers, as they call them. That's a hard group of... I always talk about it. This one's a mako shark. This one's a cheetah. This one's a rhino. I mean, it's a group of nasty velociraptor beasts that you have to tame.
That have nice salaries and well-earned egos in their profession.
And it's really important, too,
Yeah.
obviously. So that is just something to keep an eye on. Something I wanted to mention, and we did bring this up, too, is Arth and McCurley, I think, had a lot of value having them around from last year.
Agree.
And the biggest thing is, what they're probably going to be doing a lot of is they're going to be starting to watch players and free agents in last year's tape. Or I don't know what the timeline is. But at least those guys can be like, this is why we did what we did.
Here's why we were in cover 3.
Right. Why didn't you Fryermuth out there more? Well, he had a knee this week, and or whatever. Or he can't block this guy. Or, the Ravens are his worst block. I'm just making stuff up. But whatever.
Learn to think as those around you think, repurpose to learn to think as those who preceded you thought.
Yeah. And we're like, this was our logic going into that game. It didn't work, or it worked perfectly, and this is how we got the most out of this player, but don't ask him to run sideline to sideline. He can't do that. Right.
And then interesting special teams angle for you, Matt. Special teams coordinator Danny Crossman and senior special teams assistant Darius Swinton. First time since 2011 that the Steelers have had a multi-man special teams staff.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's
and
impressive by Danny that he did it all himself.
I was going to say, when you have a veteran guy like Danny, maybe that makes a little more sense. Now, to his credit, Danny Crossman is
that's still a lot of people
Danny
you have to
Smith
coach.
To Danny Crossman,
I meant Smith. Yeah,
you've got another very experienced Danny and Crossman.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, I love the idea of adding to that special team staff. Why not bring in a number two?
I mean, there's a lot of human beings you're coaching. I mean, half the roster is going to be some kind of special teamer.
And as we saw all year, you're going to deal with injuries. You're going to deal with
they take your starters off you for no good reason.
You were using this guy in a certain role, but sorry, we had to cut him because we had to go out and get an extra cornerback or whatever.
That was my starting gunner.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so I like seeing that. So 2 special teams coach, and then a pretty beefy strength and conditioning staff, Matt. Head strength and conditioning, Mark Lovett. Director of Performance Integration and Sports Science, Grant Thorne. Strength and conditioning assistants, 2 of them, Abe Munier and Justice Gallick. And then, of course, the final piece of this Mike McCarthy inaugural coaching staff, the Chief of Staff, Steve Scarnecchia.
Okay. I don't know
those
how
are
to call.
behind the scenes.
We've talked about Scarnecchia and his father and all those things, too. I think a big thing he's going to do is I think it's pretty well known, too, that one of McCarthy's not least priorities, but things he's not going to spend as much time on is like practice prep.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many minutes are we going to do this period? How are we going to do this? Are we going to do red zone? Are we going to do third downs? I think Scarnecchia is probably going to be doing a lot of that stuff, like building the practice scripts and that type of thing.
Yes.
It's from how I'm gathering it.
And he's got a lot of experience doing that, as we've outlined in previous shows, and I expect that to be a real strength for Mike McCarthy here in year 1. Just comparing to kind of round this conversation out, Matt, comparing coaching staff sizes, if you will. Mike McCarthy, and this is just I don't know what the right way to label this is. Coaches proper. Offense, defense, special teams. So this does not include the.
Did you include Scarnecchia or not?
No, this does not include strength and conditioning and chief of staff. This is just offense, defense, special teams, coaches.
And folks, they did not have a chief of staff last year.
They did not. And
at first, I'd never heard of it.
And the strength and conditioning staff has been beefed up too.
Okay,
bigger than it was under Mike Tomlin.
That is more people that are going to be dealing with players.
Mike Tomlin, over the last few years, had the same size staff: 10 offensive assistants, 7 defensive assistant, 1 special teams coach for 19 in total.
Okay.
Mike McCarthy has 10 offensive assistants, 8 defensive coaches, and 2 special teams coaches for 21 in total.
So and the
chief of staff and a beefed up strength and conditioning staff. Yes.
I would even probably count the chief of staff as a football coach.
I'm
not exactly sure what it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's Kevin Colbert, Omar Khan.
And that number 21 is the exact same number that Mike McCarthy had his last year in Dallas when he was with the Cowboys.
Okay, I'm sure he had conversations during the interview process. Of course they did. How would you like to build your staff? And he probably was happy with it. And let's do exactly what we did in Dallas. Is that cool with you guys? Sure, we can make that work. Okay, done deal.
Yeah, it's
different names.
It's encouraging,
right? Yeah.
Because I think on the surface you might look and you might say, okay, 2 extra coaches. I like that, but I still wish it was a little bit beefier. But when you kind of zoom out a little bit further,
I also think you can have too many cooks in the kitchen too. Some of these teams have like 30, 28.
Yes.
I'm like, what do you do? Yeah.
Yes. So I think this is the right balance. You beefed up that staff. You added some more pass game, type coordinators and things like that. Assistants at certain areas and on special teams, chief of staff. So not, going super size me from Mike Tomlin's staff.
Yeah.
But certainly an upgrade.
And I'm sure what will also happen between now and when you really get into regular season or training camp mode, some of these guys will be doing special projects. Why don't you go investigate this Seahawk defense? What can we learn from that?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, draft stuff or whatever.
Oh, they'll be busy. Don't worry.
They'll be special projects.
They're not just sitting on their laurels.